Yeah.
Was the Trump and Elon feud just one big setup? We are going to talk about that today. I am taking over Ryan's segment for today. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Good, man. Great to be on with you.
Awesome. This is going to be a fun topic. What are your plans for the 4th? Happy 4th of July, everybody, by the way.
Yeah, happy Independence Day. Well,
Yeah.
my plans, we will be going on a little mini parade here. We got some Yankee Doodle we're going to be playing, blaring on the speakers, and we got a little wagon we're going to pull our 4-year-old son around in, and a bunch of flags. And my wife and I and our son are going to run around the neighborhood for a while. Maybe go to the pool too, I think.
Yeah, that's always a good idea, especially here in the southern hemisphere.
Southern part of the northern hemisphere, maybe. Yeah.
Southern part of them. Yeah, thank you for the correction.
I don't know where you calling in from. Yeah.
It feels
Texas.
worse than
I'm
this.
from down here in Texas. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna keep it a little bit more lighthearted today. I do have some good stuff to talk with you guys about, but we don't want to get too crazy on the news stuff. But we are going to cover a few things here and there. So the big question that we are asking is Elon Musk playing right into President Trump's hand, just like Hakeem Jeffries did with his filibuster last night? We've got to point out the filibusters because that's our namesake, right? So Jeffries went on a crazy rant. Do I have that one pulled up? Yeah, here we go. He went on a rant for nearly 9 hours trying to hold up the bill. I think the idea was because he wanted to make sure that it was voted on in the daytime so that nobody could sneak anything in, right? Which, I mean, I get that. That makes sense. But he ended up actually kind of shooting himself in the foot, according to Vice President Vance, who said he was getting messages from congressmen. I was undecided on the bill, but then I watched Hakeem Jeffries' performance, and now I'm a firm yes, which I think is so hilarious and funny enough, related to our topic here, because this is kind of like a game that politicians play, right? So the bill has passed, of course, if you haven't heard yet, but not without its trials. There was a lot of back and forth, and people changing their votes or whatever. I think didn't it go through 3 different types of votes?
Yeah,
or something like that?
Another late night one.
Yeah, so it was definitely a long haul on this one, but in true Trump fashion, the bill will be signed today at 5 p.m. Eastern while fighter jets and bomber planes fly over the White House. I'm not really that surprised, to be honest.
You cannot make this stuff up.
Trump also announced that that the White House is going to be hosting a UFC event next year for America's 250th birthday party. Also, not a surprise, considering his closeness with Dana White. That's his name, right? The UFC guy.
Yeah. Does hosting mean it's on the White House lawn or in the house, or does it mean the White House is a sponsor of it, or
I think it's literally going to be at the White House. I'm
not
I heard certain, but
I heard it was going to be RFK Jr. versus Putin. Is that correct? Or no?
That would be amazing if it was. I would tune in for that for sure. I think many people would, but I can't imagine what the outcome of that would be like between the two countries, because that'd be a lot of drama depending on who won. I don't know, man. That might be cause for war.
Fighting for pinks on that one. Yeah, racing for pinks on that one.
Oh my god,
that's funny.
This day and age that we live in, man, it is something else. I am so glad to be alive in this time. I'll say that much. All right.
Everything is entertaining and serious, like seriously scary. I don't know. It's a scary amount of seriousness, but at the same time, you got to be lighthearted about it. So that's a good setup for today. Yeah.
I think you just made up a great word though. Scariously. That's right there.
That's awesome. Oh man.
So we're going to talk about the bill and a little bit of a game theory. Speaking of people doing things, making a scene in ways that maybe they didn't intend to, like Jeffries. And so obviously the bill, it was going to pass all along, right? We all knew the bill was going to pass at some point in some iteration of it. But Trump really wanted it to pass by the 4th so that he could do this big optics signing it on the 4th, which I think is great. It's fun as long as everything is, super patriotic, depending on whether or not you agree with what's in the bill. But that's a different story. So Trump, I'm going to do a little bit of a setup, okay, on how I think things might have happened, because we're talking about Trump and Elon, but we're also talking about the bill. So Trump negotiates higher than he wants to so that he can land close to where he actually wants. And he says that in this fun little book that I have right here. I'm going to show you guys. If you haven't read this, I recommend it, because all it takes is reading this to know what Trump is actually doing. And he really just tells stories about how he's done business over the years. And when you read this, you look at what he's doing with the presidency, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. He aims high so that when it finally comes down, it's actually where he wants it to be. And he's made that strategy very clear. He doesn't actually hide his strategies at all. You just have to be paying attention. So the bills in the past have been kind of more snuck in under the radar, which is what Jeffries was trying to do. He was trying to make it so that they couldn't do that with this bill, right? Which I commend, actually. But bills in the past have been passed at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, something like that.
Yeah,
because
there's good reason to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's legit. And that obviously didn't happen, but I think that was also part of the plan to a degree. Let's talk about the Trump and Musk feud for a bit. Here's where things start to get really interesting for me. Number one, we had a feud, of course. Number two, this has become so popular. Like, everybody knows about this so much. It's such a thing that there's literally a Wikipedia for it.
Are you serious?
My presentation back up. Yeah, there's a legit Wikipedia site. Let me see if I can get I don't know how to just easily pop the thing back up.
Well, while you're getting that up, I want to mention, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this, but you held up the art of the deal. And the thing is, so I've worked in business with several hundred companies and all over the world. And the thing is, the art of the deal only works if you actually have the leverage and you actually know what you're doing. Like, you can't just make up a number higher than what you really want. And people see through it, and they act, and you will put things on the table in a negotiation that you don't really care about, but you can give it as a concession, So say you don't care about payment terms, but you demand certain payment terms. Well, okay, fine. We'll give you payment terms if you give us this other thing that on the price or whatever, or this reduction or whatever it is. And so, but it only works if you actually have the leverage. And so that's where Trump is using this business expertise and this experience globally. It's just a matter of what's the leverage. What do you want? You need to know what the other side wants so that you can use it to get you into the position that you want to be in. And so that's how you work this out. And that's what we're going to be talking about with game theory and working out the strategically in all of this. And so, I just wanted to mention that is that you can't just arbitrarily pick a number higher. I mean, maybe if it's your first time buying a new car, you would do that, and who cares, because you're just going to land somewhere. For sure, you're going to land somewhere below the list price and probably above what you want. So, but with this, you have to be a lot more strategic and a lot more measured, especially when you are working with different parts of the world that you don't do business the same way, and you don't anyway. So I thought that was important why you get that pulled up.
Oh, absolutely. It is. And to further the point, when you're a novice, you would just arbitrarily pick a number because you don't know what you're doing yet. But Trump is not a novice. He's been doing this for decades. He's been doing this longer than I've been alive. You know what I mean? Like, he knows what he's doing. And to be honest, so does Elon. He's had his fair share of this kind of thing. So this is the Wikipedia for it.
Wow.
Which when I found this, I was like, it's literally been documented as a now nomenclature. This is a thing that has gone down in history. So that's just crazy.
Oh man. That's crazy.
Moving right along. Okay. So this is a game. Okay. It's the art of the deal, and it is influenced by The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which another book I just had to pull it up. Another thing that I recommend everybody study. This is not just for physical warfare, by the way. This is for political warfare, mental warfare. You could use the concepts in this book and apply it to anything, basically. If you're playing some kind of game. Okay. So, right. Every game has a goal. Everybody in the game has a goal, and there is an end game for each person in the game, right? So the end game for Trump seems to be pretty clear because he wanted the bill passed. That's part of the end game. Now, here's an interesting angle, and I'm not going to get too deep into this one because this isn't as lighthearted as I want this episode to be. But there actually is this interesting other end game that Trump may have had if him and Elon were working in tandem with each other. And that is to get eyes back on the whole Epstein issue, the Epstein client list issue. Because what did Elon Musk do in one of these little tiffs? He accused Trump of being on the Epstein flight list, right? Or being friends with him or whatever it was. And so obviously Trump refuses that he has anything bad to do with that. But people started talking about that again when it had kind of gone under the radar. And now all of a sudden we're talking about it again. That's interesting, especially in light of the trial that apparently is now ending with P. Diddy. When that's, like I said, once again, a whole nother story. But my thought on this is it's getting the light shined on different things for a particular reason. And we're not going to know exactly what all these reasons are till the end of the game. Okay. Which hopefully isn't anytime soon. So Trump is all about the spectacle, and this Trump-Musk feud is quite the spectacle. Once again, it's another concept that he utilizes in his book where he talks about like he likes the big shiny things. He wants to make sure everybody's looking. So first, both Trump and Elon made threats to each other that neither one of them have actually followed through on. Okay. This is why I think there's something more here. And actually one of our commenters, this is a fabricated. This is what it feels like for sure. It does seem like it's a little bit fabricated because if you're going to make a threat like that, you better be willing to follow through on it. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of that. So for example, Elon threatens to decommission SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft, right? And then Trump threatens to sell the gifted Tesla. How petty is that?
Well, I think, I think these are both very 0% intentions of doing that, but more of just a flex of, by the way, this is the reality. For me, that's just kind of like a backdoor way of pointing out, like, yeah, we don't have zero stakes here. For me, that's kind of what it is. It's just kind of like, well, I guess I can take that toy away and you could not play with it at all. Right. I don't necessarily plan on actually taking the toy away. I'm just pointing out that, you're using that toy because I let you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's a tit for tat, but no follow through. I haven't seen any follow through. If you guys have seen, if any of our viewers have seen follow through on any of these threats that either one of them have made, please let us know in the comments because I want to know.
There's one thing I want to add about, you mentioned, I don't know if it's getting the word out, but there's this whole public relations and controlling media narratives and is something that in normal day-to-day business, like you wouldn't really have to deal with that. But Trump has had to deal with that. If you've read that book, he gives all kinds of examples he did that were in the public eye where he needed public support in that. And so in his life, that has been the case. And he's had media shows that have been like top shows for years. And so this guy knows how to drive the narrative, and he knows how to say the thing that gets people talking about what he wants talking about here. And so, I think, I think that's kind of a critical factor here as well. So now we're talking about geopolitics where he beats these people at their own game. Like he beats the media at media, and they end up covering things the way that is beneficial, or at least just gets people talking about it. And then people go, wait a minute. And then they dive in and say, they look into it for themselves. Like when he said Canada should be the 51st state, and then they think that's ridiculous, but then they actually look into it. They look into it and they think, and then they find out all this other stuff about the relationship between Canada and the U.S. And it's now we're more informed. And so, whether he's playing that kind of 4D chess or whether it's like this real, just a happy accident outcome, it really doesn't matter. He knows, he's not giving a unintentional narrative with these things.
Yeah, I think most of it is intentional, but obviously there are going to be some unintentional happy outcomes, like you said. Like he's probably got an angle on something, and then when something else manifests, I'm sure he's not going to be like, well, no, that's not what I planned. If it benefits him, he's going to be like, well, sweet, I didn't see that.
Double down on it.
We'll take it.
Double down.
Right. So my thought on this is that the proofs of this theory are going to be whether or not any of these threats have actually any action taken on them. Because in my opinion, in my viewpoint, if the threats actually happen, then it's less of this game theory than I thought. But I don't know, maybe it still is part of the game theory thing. But to me, that would be like, oh, well, if they're actually following through on it, then it's less likely that this was a big game, right?
Well, I mean, when you say game theory, so like, do you think of, I mean, is it literally just a strategic decision making, again, with these rational actors, where they each, person's choice depends on the other person's choice? Or is it some more like, because like then everything would be game theory, or, to some degree? Is that, or is it some more technical type thing you're talking about applying? Or is it just like,
there's some
yes or no game theory?
There are technical aspects of the game theory, and I'm not a professional on game theory. I'm kind of more have read up on the art of war, which they're not the same thing. They just kind of go hand in hand. So with game theory, there are particular moves and counter moves that you make that when you study game theory, if your opponent or your team player of whatever type does a certain move, you know exactly the best moves to do in reaction to that.
Yeah. And this is
what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And this is kind of like where if I was getting ready for a negotiation, my job would be to brief my team, or if I'm leading the negotiation, would be to be very clear on what I think the other side wants. Like, what is the actual thing that they want? And then, we would lean towards, because I know in game theory, you have non-zero sum game and you have zero sum game, where you can have win-win, or you can have somebody wins and somebody loses. Somebody gets elected, the bill passes, or it doesn't, or somebody doesn't get elected. Like, and so it depends what we're talking about here. But my goal would be to really know, what does the other side want? Like, what's their end all be all? And then you would basically, understanding that, you would know what you could ask for and get. And then you would have iterations to where, like, we had an example of where a supplier said, we want to quote both of these. We want both of this business, this material and that material. And we said, okay. They said, give us an RFQ or request for quote, and then we'll quote it out. And so, but we needed to buy time because we were single sourced on this other one. So if they didn't give us what we wanted, we're trying to buy time. They want to charge more money and all this. And so we said, well, okay, give us a quote for this and give us a quote for this. So we want to have them separate. But somebody on our team made a mistake of saying, do we have to tie those together, or can we separate them? And that would have bought us an extra month. But this person wasn't thinking, and the person said, no, do not send us anything with them separated. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. You just wasted 4 weeks of our negotiation. You threw it in the trash. Anyway, so it's kind of like, that's an example of being strategic in your reveal of information, where we could have just bought more time.
Yeah, that's that is a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a good way to think about this. Of course, something like this is on a grander scale, and there's more details to it that maybe are a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, clandestine. But yeah, that's exactly it. You're forcing somebody's hand to do something. You're setting yourself up in a particular way to where you're forcing an outcome, but you can't tell everybody everything, because then, like you said, somebody gives it away, and then it's like, oh, well, yeah, we could just do that. So I think we all do this in our everyday lives too, on a smaller scale,
Yeah, you're right. And most people aren't that strategic about it. And they may not realize when they're doing it. You just need to be intentional. So but the difference is with Trump, you actually saw where he said tariffs or else, and he was actually willing to do it. But it wasn't a fake, what's it called? It wasn't just blowing in the wind. It was actually like, we're going to do this, but it was to call people to the table to do what they should have already been doing. All along, it was just an example. I mean, tariffs is a very clear cut example of what a way to get someone else to act the way they should be acting without needing to force a tariff or something like that. And normally in business, if somebody's not acting the way they should be acting, you would just not do business with them. But that can't always be the case. Like the example I gave, we had another supplier that we had one source, and we were kind of screwed, for lack of a better term, that we had no other option but to go with it. But we had to give this other supplier the perception that we did have options, but really once they found out we didn't have any options, that price went from $12 to $90. So they found out, and they said, by the way, it'll go back to $12 if you do a 3-year agreement with us. We didn't have a choice. We had to do the 3-year agreement.
You just described in the, I'm getting my reference manual here.
Yeah.
You just described what is it? It's the art of war. There's a whole like section on this, deception.
I don't,
when strong in reality appear to be weak, while brave in reality appear to be cowardly. This method was effective against the Huns. Like that's what you did. You appeared to be weak when, or strong when you actually had a weakness. Yeah,
a weak position. But the thing is, though, I don't really like the word deception. I would say more like a selective transparency, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't lie about something. Like if they said, do you have other options? Do you have only one source? What I would say is, I can't get into our strategy. That's not something I can share. Like I wouldn't just be like, yeah, we do. And we're going to be, oh man, we're going to be up a creek if you don't help us, like no way you would do that because it would also hurt the relationship. Like we could have a good long-term strategic relationship together if they work with us and we work with them. But if we're going to open the door and then they whack us with the hammer, they're okay, fine. You know what happened? We had a 3-year relationship with them. And then by that time we were looking for something else and we did not get in that same position again. So they had to make a determination of, do they want to take advantage of us or do they want to play and help us all win? We landed somewhere in the middle. So we did keep some business with them after that 3 years. But the point is, like I said, deception, I don't know. It's a interesting term, but I said, I like the transparency, but there is actual deception that needs to happen. Like in war. I mean, obviously they sent stealth B-2 bombers one direction, and they send the other ones the right direction, And so, that needs to happen, but I would get anything that maintains integrity. And obviously that's a whole nother discussion, but in business and these sorts of things, I like selective transparency.
That's good. I like that. That's a good term right there. I'll try to remember that one. Selective transparency. So what's the point of all of this though? Between Trump and Elon, I've got a couple examples here, or a couple thoughts on it, I should say. The controversy sells, right? Everybody knows that. So when something that you want to have eyes on is being overlooked, all you got to do is put the eyes back on it. Well, what's the easiest way to do that? Controversy. Okay. And here's an example of how this works really well. And this might be one of those like extra bonuses that happened, or maybe it was intentional, but conspiracy theories are now abounding in an interesting way. I am seeing, because of people looking at this bill and really like digging into it, and they're upset, particularly on the left. People are upset about this bill. So what are they doing? They're digging. That's great. I want people to do that. Let's dig. But what's happening is it's turning people into conspiracy theorists. It's turning the left into conspiracy theorists. And in my opinion, when you start going down that road, obviously there's a point where there's no return and you shouldn't go down particular paths. But there are some paths where if you just start to question a little bit, instead of just take the government's word for every single thing that they say, you start to uncover some hidden truths that really need to come to light. And I'm wondering if part of this is when somebody who's very far on the left starts uncovering some quote unquote conspiracy theories, but they're actually just truths that have yet to be confirmed, then they're going to start leaning a little bit more right, because they're going to suddenly think, you know what? Maybe I haven't been told the truth all along. And I'm seeing that start to happen on social media. Have you seen that?
It's the red pill. I call it. You put I got this from what's his name? Greg Kokel. He's a Christian apologist, and he says my goal is not necessarily to convince the atheist or the person that's against God, doesn't believe in the Bible, doesn't believe in Jesus. My goal is not necessarily to convince them in one conversation, but they're comfortable with their way of thinking right now. My goal is to put a pebble in their shoe. So they're not comfortable with where they're walking right now, and it just bothers them. It just is a little crack, and the crack will get bigger and bigger. And what you're talking about is maybe the first pebble for some people, or the little crack where it's going to get bigger, it's going to perpetuate, and pretty soon it's going to take the thing down, and they're going to be full-blown conservative.
Yep, I'm super curious to see if that actually really does manifest for a lot of these people. And I'm sure it's not going to be the entire left who's all of a sudden now conservative. Like, that's a ridiculous notion. But just more people coming at least center is going to be interesting.
And I'd say maybe I shouldn't say full-blown conservative. I should say full-blown able to have a rational conversation and realize we agree on a lot more than what you really thought. You know, like there's so many conversations. I've been in the middle of a factory as managing this operation. And we would have conversations with some people on the left, and they would just start shouting like immediately. Like you say one thing, it's a trigger. But then there was another guy that was just a very rational guy, very funny, sarcastic kind of guy, very down to earth, but just really off his rocker when it came to political stuff. He would just say things. I'm just like, what are you talking about? But we could have a very rational conversation about it. Like, and it was fun because we could like make fun of each other and jest each other with what we thought the other person's position was a little stupid or silly or whatever. But, you know, hopefully people can at least come to that, because it's like, why do we got to get angry about this stuff? Like, let's get away from that.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder too. And actually that's a good segue into my next point. Between Elon and Trump, it's so dramatic. These statements that are being made in action, it is so absolutely dramatic. I have a hard time believing that it is thoroughly genuine to that point. You know what I mean? Like, are you really that upset that you're going to like somebody take this guy's phone away? Kind of dramatic, you know? So there's two different options here. I think the first option is Musk is overworked and emotionally unstable, or someone needs to take his phone away. Like I said, like that's one option. And that's what most people think. I would venture to say that most people are kind of on that train. The other one is that Musk and Trump are actually intentionally stirring the pot to keep the agenda rolling at this speed, because they both have something to gain from it. And that's another part of game theory, is like, what does everybody have to gain from this, right? So the big question when it comes to the game theory or art of war is, what do they have to gain? Trump's is obvious. What's Elon's end game? What do you think that is?
You know, part of me, and I'm just, as we talk about this, I think I'm getting more understanding of it. But I think, you know, an end game for him could be, I want to stay in the headlines. You know, I want to stay in the headlines, and I'll do anything I need to do except crack that foundation of whatever. Because he may have something that he can, you know, he can fall so far on the scale, and keep his name in the public eye. But there's a foundation here that he won't touch and crack. And apparently, accusing Trump of being on the Epstein list is not cracking the foundation. I would have thought that would have been a little much. But you know, he's also, you know, I've put tweets out where afterward you're like, yeah, I probably could have said that better, and you remove it, or you know, whatever. But you know, he doesn't really have that luxury, I guess you could say.
No,
but
be careful.
He's been very clear in interviews that, like, if it hurts his stock, he doesn't care. Like, he's going to do what he wants to do, and he's not going to. And I respect that to some degree. But as you know, as a CEO, he does have a fiduciary duty to the shareholders. But at the same point, now they're all on notice. They all know that he does that. Okay, if you want to play the game, then you can get that stock. So one thought is just that, you know, keeping his mind in the headlines, or keeping his name in the headlines, and that sort of thing. I don't know. That's my big thing for him, is just kind of keeping that out there, and maybe stirring the mix a little bit. We'll see from there. But
that's actually one of the points that I had written down, was keeping his name up there, because we all know, like, obviously he's got enough money. He doesn't need money. So what's the other? If you already have power and money, what is it that you need from attention? Well, maybe you just need the attention itself.
I got a lot of other theories on Elon Musk. You know, I think he's building a system of what do you call it? I don't know if control is the right word now, but you know, you want everybody to be on X. It's the free speech platform. Get everybody on there. Get that to be the town square again. And then, by the way, you can make your payments on there now. And by the way, you can get this thing hooked up to your brain and actually go ahead and hook that to your X account. And by the way, go ahead and put your bank account details in. And you know, fast forward a decade, and it's like, oh well, we're going to change our user policy, you know, now. And now that everybody's there. Okay, if you want to be in the public square, march this way. Otherwise, you're not going to be there. So, you know, I think there's something coming there. I don't think there's, you know, and all the technology and all that kind of stuff. So that's where it's kind of like, embrace what Elon's doing, but he didn't jump out of his boat into our boat. You know, right? He's just kind of using one of our oars or something. I don't know. I'm deep in these analogies, you know, but to stir his own boat, steer his own boat. That's not bad, actually.
Yeah, that's true. I'm right on that.
A sail. That's maybe a better, using our sail to move his own boat. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Stole it from our boat and put it on his. That's what he did right there. Yeah, that's good. I'm on board with you with that. I definitely think that there's an end game there, but that's kind of a really long one and more speculative and a little bit more conspiracy theory based.
Definitely. Yeah.
So my thought is there's one that's a little bit more immediate, and it was the one that that came up yesterday. So if anybody was here, if you tuned in yesterday for our show, you'll know that Reese dropped a little breadcrumb accidentally that made this puzzle come together a little bit better for me. And that breadcrumb is the fact that this new bill puts nearly $10 billion into NASA's pockets. I think he might have had a different number on his breakdown, so I'm pulling a number from an article that I read. But either way, tons and tons of money is going into NASA's pockets, right? Elon has wiggled his way into the space program with SpaceX, having multiple contracts worth billions of dollars with NASA. Through Doge and through all of the connections that he has made, he has more than a foot in the door with the NASA program, and he has a lot of money in it. And so here's the picture, right? You have a bill that you could be against because it's not economically feasible, or coming from Elon's perspective, but you actually would benefit from it. So what's the game? The game is make it look like you're opposed when in reality you like it, or you at least like parts of it. Yeah. I think that is part of it. And either way, like Trump versus Elon might actually just be Trump versus Elon, and both of them are playing a game against each other, or it's Trump versus Elon on the surface, and it's Trump and Elon in the background. And then one of my last thoughts on that is I could not find it this morning. I spent way too long trying to find this, but I saw a post from Truth from Trump just recently where he said something to the effect of Elon Musk is family and families sometimes fight. And that was like the nail in the coffin for me. I was like, they're playing us, dude. That is what's going on.
Well, yeah. And I think it could just be, they may have these little tantrums or rants, even in private, where they jab each other. And then now they come out and do this. And whether it was like this coordinated thing, I kind of think maybe not, but I think it maybe was not coordinated. But I think at the same time, they both know, well, there's that foundation I talked about, that word family. Like, it's kind of like there's almost nothing they could do. Apparently, if you're throwing Epstein list out there, there's almost nothing they could do that would break that, because there's some other tie there. And I think you hit on something there where he can come out, and this gets into the political aspect of this and the media stuff, where he now, if he comes out against it when he was really always for it, then when people come out and say, oh, look, he got all this money and this and that, and then he can go and say, yeah, but I was against it. Didn't you see what I said to Trump? And I'm not self-dealing. I'm not doing any of this. That's the whole point. And that gets into, like, when we talk about media, we talk about polls, we talk about all these kinds of things. Campaigns use polls. Like, they will say, like, what do you want this poll to show? Well, I want it to show me just a little bit ahead, or I want it to show me just a little bit behind, or they will get the results you want for that poll. Like, that is the way they do that. Like, and that is the whole point. And it's how you frame, it's the strategy, it's all these kinds of things, whether it's in a campaign, whether it's to get support for winning over the public, whether it's geopolitical matters, whether it's international relations. All of this, you have to play all these things. And that's why we all got to think for ourselves and not just take these narratives. And that's why you got to listen to Filibusted, because we're busting those narratives.
That is great. And that was all I had. So I think that's a fantastic way to end this show. I'm glad you guys all tuned in with us. It has been real fun talking about this. I hope that you guys all have a really amazing Independence Day. And I hope everybody listening wakes up tomorrow with all their fingers. That's
God bless. Yeah. God bless the USA, and God bless you and your family, and have a great weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. See you guys Monday.